Good morning, I'm Frank Powers, and this is Lifestyle Tucson, the program where I speak to our neighbors, the people behind the scenes of our amazing organizations, small businesses, and nonprofits. Our friends are informing you how they serve our community, and they are here to give you updates on future projects. Let's make some new friends today. Yeah. Mental health is so important. A lot of people talk about it, and still many don't truly acknowledge it, especially in themselves. That's why organizations like the National Alliance on Mental Illness, aka NAMI, are just as important. What started as a small group of families gathered around a kitchen table in 1979 has blossomed into the nation's leading voice on mental health. Today, they are an alliance of more than 600 local affiliates and 49 state organizations who work in your community to raise awareness and provide support and education that was not previously available to those in need. NAMI envisions a world where all people affected by mental illness live healthy, fulfilling lives supported by a community that cares. And today, I am fortunate enough to speak with Sarah Smolowitz, volunteer extraordinaire at the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Sarah, welcome to Lifestyle Tucson.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm excited, and she's more excited than that. Trust me, we were talking before. All right, you are. I will say this: you seem very professional.
Thank you.
For this organization, right? It's good to see you. I'm glad that we got to get together because this is kind of happening last minute, but it works out because you do have a great event coming up in just a week that we're going to talk about in just a moment. But first, why don't you give me a little bit of a 101 of what NAMI is all about?
The way that NAMI works that I love so much is that NAMI isn't found in offices, it's found in communities. It's found in classrooms, it's found in church break rooms, it's found in other places. And what makes that so special is that we carry our work into the community. So the kind of work we carry into the community, for one, is seminars that pertain to helping someone that we love with mental illness or our own selves with mental illness. And so that can be something like family to family, where over the course of an 8-week seminar, family members build relationships with each other, they build relationships with NAMI, and they get an essential 101 on what the best way to handle their loved one's mental illness is. Another great program that we do is called NAMI Basics, and that's for parents of children with mental illness. And so those types of things, those types of programming are how we destigmatize the mentally ill and destigmatize mental illness in general, because it's important that we bring love to it. It's important that we bring a good attitude to it. And so when we take apart mental illness and we say, here are some basic tools that I have that might help you, what that really leads to is I can handle this problem. I can handle the solution too.
I believe that. One of the things that I've always found is that isn't there like an old phrase, like when you give something a name, like it takes away its power? That if you're struggling with something and then you figure out, oh, that's just this, here's what you do. You don't feel as lost in the woods. I myself have had that happen where I was struggling with some stuff, just like fear. I have a lot of fear and anxiety. And I was saying this stuff, I'm like confessing to my mom about like, I've just had these thoughts. And she goes, oh, those are intrusive thoughts. I'm like, what? Like I was afraid to tell her because I'm like, these are scaring me, some of these thoughts. Why am I feeling this way? And this was during COVID stuff, right? So we were all up in arms. And she goes, I have that. Your sister has that. It's just that. It's just these thoughts. You have to let them go. You just let them go. They're random thoughts. And you're going to have millions of thoughts. They don't all matter. Don't hang on to some of these thoughts. And I found some messaging about that and other little documentaries about that. And just knowing that's what it was, I didn't feel alienated. This fear of even confessing this to my family was like gone within a second. And my mom being like, oh, that's no big deal. I have that. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, huh? It's hard to feel negative in a negative time, but that's what some of it was. And I just couldn't control it for a while. Knowing that and just getting that term literally took that demon right down to nothing. Almost. And I was able to beat it where that doesn't happen as much. And again, the situation changed, obviously. But I found that to be very helpful.
So I would like to challenge that.
Go on.
Imagine that you are a person that, we'll say, shares those thoughts, but they don't stop. And they don't let go of their power. And they become obsessive. Mm-hmm. That's how my mental illness works.
Yeah.
I have the intrusive thoughts. I have the terrible dreams. But I'm not just scared to tell people. It's that I'm scared that they're going to say, you've told us you've had that dream so many times. Why can't you move past it? Or even worse, no big deals. And for me, with no big deals, it sends the message, that it's not as important. And so what I needed when I had intrusive thoughts was someone to say, that had to be really awful. And I think NAMI provides that, or at least we provide the people that have those intrusive thoughts too. You know, I'm in the 12-step community, and we always say that we're only as sick as our secrets. So whatever secrets or intrusive thoughts we carry around with us on an everyday basis, they germinate and they grow in our head. So your mom having the courage to say, no big deals, that was pretty cool of her.
Well, yeah, and that's what I mean, because here's the other part of this. There's obviously different levels and shades to this, isn't there? When it comes to even let's just use an easier thing to talk about, anxiety. Anxiety is a thing that lots of us have, or some of us have very little of. But we know what it's like to be anxious. Anyone does. Getting on stage, every normal person's, oh, I'm anxious about this. Meeting, job interviews. And many of us deal with different levels of what that is. So even that fear of what I had, it certainly was a tenth of what you're dealing with, but certainly was a brand new, terrifying experience for me.
Heck yeah.
And luckily, having a support system of someone saying, it's okay, is really the thing. And that's what your organization is. It's saying, it's okay. Not it's nothing, not it's simple. I wasn't trying to downplay it, obviously. I just know it was new for me. And
absolutely.
I always talk about this with lots of people too. I just use this example that I've said my whole life because I'm always the guy helping folks. We're all just a bag of chemicals. That's all we are, just chemicals and bones, right? So think about that. If you are just have a chemical imbalance, that could be a whole different thing. That there's a solution to it. That might be something that you can take or some new knowledge you can get that will help you facilitate some of your life. And I've found it just even that is something to understand. Like, forgive yourself for being away. We're all different levels of everything because whatever mixture we're made up of is very unique. Plus, our environment and experience are going to affect a lot of it, not just our chemicals. But I just want more of your experience because we're not even looking at these questions because I just want to hear from you to just tell me more about what you're talking about because I don't want to sound like I'm downplaying anything or anything is a simple solution. But little bits go a long way in mental health.
Then how about I tell you some of my obsessive thoughts and how I overcame them?
Sure.
So here were some of my intrusive thoughts when I entered recovery. And the biggest one was, I really wish people would either leave me alone or tell me what's wrong. And it just didn't stop. It was in every single thing I did. It was in every single thing I looked at. It was in every single thing I experienced. I wish people would either tell me what's wrong or leave me alone, and no matter what, love me for it. That's a pretty intense, obtrusive thought that just wouldn't stop. You know, and it wasn't until I got clean that I heard about this thing called post-traumatic stress disorder. Didn't know I had it, didn't know what it was. I thought it was, you know, you see the Lifetime movies. I thought it had to be that bad for you to have PTSD. I thought things had to get that bad. And I found out that bad, like you just said, is on a continuum. It's how we define it individually. And so I had had enough trauma that I didn't need to compare my trauma to your trauma. It had already harmed me. And so what I learned by getting clean, by having those experiences, by recognizing that intrusive thought that just wouldn't go away no matter how I tried to get rid of it, you know, what I learned is that I'm a pretty powerful being. One of the great things that NAMI does is that it creates a shame and stigma-free environment. And the big deal with that is that I don't know about any other mentally ill person, but I was the person I hated the most. Mm-hmm. I was the most disappointed in myself. I was the most disgusted with myself. Oh, and by the way, I've got a serious diagnosis to go along with this idiocy that I'm doing. I've got post-traumatic stress disorder. Let's just make things worse, right? And so what I didn't understand is that that's not necessary. I am a blessed person, and NAMI helped me see that. So the way they did that, the very first thing that they allowed me to do was volunteer there. And I say allowed me because I was a little bit of a package. I was a little bit of a mess when I came to NAMI. And the reason that I say volunteering there made such a difference is that I had been out of work since 2018. See, what happened, my story is I had a massive breakdown at work. The police were called, the crisis team was called, everybody was called, and everyone finally agreed, why don't you just take a medical leave, Sarah? You know, and I'm lucky that it resolved that quickly, that it was just taking medical leave. Some people aren't. I hadn't been at work in any meaningful capacity until 2021 or whenever I started hanging around NAMI. So answering the phones was a very big deal. Phones were scary.
I believe that.
Computers are scary. And you want me to use both of them? And you want me to use it to help your nonprofit? You trust me? Oh my gosh. And not to be funny, but it was like, do you know who you're dealing with exactly? Do you know what kind of background I have? And what I found out is there's an emphatic yes, actually, and we think you're cool anyway.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many times those first 6 months I dropped calls. So if you're one of the calls that I got during those 6 months, I'm sorry. You probably heard the answering machine more often than I intended you to. And rather than sending you to the right person, I sent you to their voicemail. I didn't mean to do that, but that shows you where I was at. So I have to tell you, mastering voicemail was a big freaking deal.
Yeah.
Because now I knew what keys to push to send you to the real live person. And so developing small skills like that, those are soft skills that you need in the workplace. Those are genuine skills that if you don't have them, take time to build. And my post-traumatic stress disorder limited my ability to handle the fact that I kept sending people to voicemail. You know, that was very stressful. I was very upset with myself. And again, what NAMI did was, we think you're cool anyway. We'll return their voicemails. And they kept it just that simple for me. And these days, what they allow me to do is hang out with people like you. I get to do programs like In Our Own Voice, where those of us with mental illness go out into the community and talk about our mental illness. They let me do things like outreach fairs and mental health fairs. And every time they allowed me to do something more, my confidence blossomed. See, today is an especially good day for me. I just got back with a caseworker who's helping me with housing. And yesterday I met with a caseworker who's helping me with employment. Now, when I had my breakdown at 2018, I didn't have any further thoughts than, I don't know if I can go on living. Mm-hmm. I mean, my mental illness wasn't treated correctly. But now it's like a total 180. Now I not only can go on living, but NAMI showed me I can thrive.
And you deserve to thrive.
Heck,
that's
yeah.
That's the important part of this too. And I want everyone to know, you matter. And a lot of people out there, what did you call yourself before? Like, you are a very special and powerful being, something like that, right? Because you are. And humans have that capability. No matter how down in the muck, the mental muck you might get, the thing is, you got to realize you can't always pull yourself out. You need to get a helping hand. Reach that hand out so someone can help you. And this organization does exactly that. And you are the living example. And thank you so much for coming on the show, because I do love when I talk to organizations that do send representatives of, you're not just, well, I'm a CEO, I used to work for this one, and now I work for this one, and it's great. No, I went through this, I dealt with it, and I am a success story who now is able to be strong enough and bold enough to go out into the world, publicly speak, the number one fear more than death, and talk about it and share your story, which is a very vulnerable thing to do. Thank you for doing that.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's really important. Let's talk about some of the things that are going to be happening where some people can get involved with your organization, because you do have some events coming up.
We do.
And that's important because they are some of your bigger fundraising events and also just some of your biggest informational events to really get out, meet the community, get involved, get off the couch, as I like to say, and do something, not just for others, but for yourself. So on Saturday, April 5th at Reid Park, right outside the Performance Center, it's going to be a big fun event. Tell me all about what's going on, because we're taking a walk.
Let's take a walk indeed. NamiWalk, as you said, is our biggest fundraiser of the year. And I think more than a fundraiser, it's a community coming event. And so we have organizations like COPE that sponsored us. We have Solari, La Frontera, Sierra Tucson. We want to send a special thank you to Arizona Complete Health. All these organizations, if you noticed, are medical or mental health organizations. And they're standing out there in pride, and they're going to have tables and they're going to have info booths. And they're saying, we believe in mental health. So if we're talking strictly about the walk, there's a 1K, a 3K, and a 5K. The captain check-in, the people who have teams, is at 7:30 in the morning, bright and early. We start the festivities at 8:30. The races start at 9. By 11:30, we're finished. And so what I think I'm looking forward to the most is I get to run the resource booth. I get to be there for people that don't know anything. In fact, that's my favorite part of this job, is when I work the desk and I see a loved one or I have a loved one call in, and they are at a mess. They are at a pass. And the reason they're at a pass is that they feel so powerless with their loved one's mental illness or their own. And what I love most about those moments is you get to the real bottom of what's really going on. And you get to hear these people have the courage to be vulnerable to a complete stranger and say, I don't know how to do this. And the reason I get so excited, you can hear I'm excited about this, is that I get to provide them with some solutions. Maybe the solution is we make an appointment with Lisa Cole, our client advocate. Great lady, smart lady, takes care of our clients in first-class fashion. Maybe it's something as simple as saying, hey, the next family-to-family workshop starts on this date. Would you like me to give you Rosira's business card and you can call her and talk to her about it? Or maybe it's something as simple as, why don't you take a break and we can look at the pamphlets and information we have together? That's why I love working the resource booth. That's why I love working resource fairs, is there's still ignorance about mental illness and there's still stigma about mental illness. And what NamiWalk does is it makes it a celebration. Isn't it cool? Isn't this great? And some people might feel like, why are you celebrating something? Why not? People recover from mental illness. People blossom from mental illness. Some of the most powerful artists and speakers and politicians of our time were mentally ill. And we forget that. I had a boyfriend, and when he found out that I was living on disability, you should know that he said terrible things about people on disability before this. Just every imaginable terrible thing, that they are leeches on the system, that they don't work for work and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, a lot of people have a lot of negative aspects when it comes to that.
And then I said, Jim, I'm on disability. I have a mental illness. And it got really quiet. And he backtracked and he said, I just want to make sure the money and financing is there for people like you. And it's like, where do you think we live? Mars? Where do you think we are? We deliver your mail. We serve you your ice cream. We pilot your planes. We're everywhere. And that makes us just as important and just as valuable a part of this creation as you. And so when politicians or even people like my ex-boyfriend, notice the ex, when they say things like that, that furthers the stigma. And places like NamiWalk really look at this. Look at these families. Look at this community embracing change and embracing the solution. Look at these people challenging that stigma. I'll pass it back to you, but I have to tell you the team I'm on. The team I'm on, her name is Ann Letts. And I believe she was a medical professional in her working life. I'd have to ask her. But she's with NAMI on an ongoing basis. She just volunteers and does everything, if you can imagine. Her team that she added me to is called Let's End Stigma. Only it's spelled with her last name, Letts, Lettes.
Nice.
I got a huge kick out of that. I'm hoping you did too.
Yeah. So that's important. Everything you're talking about. You don't got to pass it back to me. I love this. All right. Trust me. Because what you're sharing is important. It's one of one. No one's got your experience, but your experience is going to help a lot of people.
I think so.
Well, you come in here, you're practically kicking a door down. I love it. You've got authority with how much you want to help people. And describing it in the way that you're describing it is incredible. So I invite anyone to go to this event. It's just in a week. And make sure you get all this information. Get as much information as you can for yourself, for a loved one, because it's so important to really acknowledge your mental health. That's just one of the most important things that we can do for each other, for ourselves, to do that. And again, thanks for sharing it all with me, because it's, and all of us here, because this is not what I was expecting. Whatever. I love your story, right? Yeah, we just get in a room and just start chatting. That's how things work. There's not a lot of prep for Lifestyle Tucson. I like having off the cuff conversations and making new friends. And this was excellent already. That you talking about getting together and making that what it's about too, is get together. It's not just a fundraiser for money. It's a community gathering to learn all that important stuff, and that I love a lot. Let me ask you this now, because there's another event coming up in June, and this is something that everyone can go to. And we'll just touch on it for a little bit. It's a virtual con, a NAMI Con, June 10th through the 13th. Hundreds of passionate, vibrant voices from around the world are going to elevate mental health. It's a big deal. So what do you know about this con? It's virtual. It's fun. Tell me a little bit about it.
I love NAMI Con.
Yeah.
What I am expressing about NAMI Con is that, again, think of NamiWalk on a national scale.
Yeah.
Think on the idea that you're going to meet someone with post-traumatic stress disorder from Hawaii. Think about that you're going to meet a doctor that all they do is treat PTSD. Or think about the fact that you're going to run into resources that treat only PTSD. I mean, isn't that cool? Just that thought that your illness is being taken so seriously. And it could be bipolar professionals. It could be a schizophrenic professional. It doesn't have to just be PTSD. To me, that's what the cool thing is about NAMI Con, is that you get to meet people that just study you. And then you get to meet people that study everything else.
Wow.
And then you get to meet people that live with everything else. Because I think also mental illness it's very stigmatizing, yes, but it's also very isolating.
Yeah.
Because once you get that diagnosis, on the one hand, it was a huge relief. Well, that describes me to a T. Can't sleep because I have nightmares. Can't stand to go to the mall because of the hypervigilance. Can't eat. Can't work. Can't do anything. Oh, is that what this is? And so I hated the path to diagnosis, but once I got the diagnosis, it was like, well, night and day.
Yeah.
So imagine meeting all those people online, and you get to do this at your own pace. You know, I don't know about you, but I call it peopling. I can only do so much adulting. I can only do so much peopling. And adulting is defined as being the responsible adult at 42 that I'm supposed to be, right? Peopling involves doing that on a greater scale with lots of people in the room. Think the mall at Christmas time. I don't know if it's my hypervigilance. I don't know if it's my OCD, but I can only do so much peopling at a time. And I'm very grateful. You mentioned support groups and support systems. You know, my boyfriend is very intuitive. We went to the Tucson Book Festival. Oh, my favorite part of Tucson is the Tucson Book Festival, or Festival of Books. And he said to me, you know, it's getting a little bit peoply here. Are you going to be okay? And I said, well, as long as you don't wander off, I should be. And he didn't wander off. You know, if something was really exciting, look, let's go here. Okay, let's go there.
Yeah.
For me, something virtual would be a dream, because whether he's available or not, I can explore and get resources and learn more about me and learn more about the situation. I think one thing that I think would surprise a lot of people is that just because we have names and diagnoses for some of these challenges doesn't mean we've stopped researching them. Doesn't mean we've stopped looking at them critically. We always want to improve in how we reach out to these people. And at NAMI Con or NAMI Con Virtual, you get to do it with other people that firmly believe in breaking the stigma and breaking the cycle.
It's the power. It's the power of people right there, where it is like getting together does help, because that community is what a lot of us need for us to thrive. And for someone to just tell you, you're fine. Nothing better than going through one of these things and you get through some point of it. It's just like, I think you've made a lot of progress.
Absolutely.
I think that you've achieved yet another level. Do you feel the way that you felt a year ago when we met with said counselor or said class or said whatever? And clearly you don't, because you're able to come out here, talk to me, go out in the world, do as much peopling as you're able to gauge, as opposed to walking around saying, why do I feel this way? That is important. And because, you know, as G.I. Joe says, knowing's half the battle. But then you got to be able to take care of the rest of it with yourself. And that is really great. And you are a success story. I often ask, like, oh, can you tell me a success story? It's you. So,
thank you.
Well, thanks for coming in today, because this was a great conversation that really helps me feel a lot. It makes me believe in what I'm doing makes a lot of sense. And what this organization and talking to organizations like this, because again, connecting dots for folks is very important. You need to help people see where they can go to get help, connect those dots and make it easier for them, because they're going through something. They're
Yes.
lost in the woods. So let's give them a guiding light by giving them a great organization, great events, a great person's going to tell them all about it, volunteering at that event. And that's really what you're doing, and that's so impressive. Lastly, let's talk about that volunteering, because that is the most important thing. And I think one of the cures for depression, I was saying off air before that the Surgeon General has declared loneliness to be an epidemic. And I know that volunteering for a cause that you care about is the way to get over some of that, because you go out, you make friends, and you start doing that sort of thing. So tell me about just some of the volunteering, then we're just going to wrap it up.
So I think that NAMI has a volunteer opportunity for every interest. I'm not diminishing any role, but there are people like me that were in a position that answering a telephone was complicated. And that is their sole volunteer vocation, is answering a phone. Well, isn't it cool to watch them do that?
Mm-hmm.
So from the bottom to the top, there's all sorts of volunteer opportunities. I think if someone wanted to get real specific and do some real research, Christabel Apostol, our volunteer coordinator, she would be the person to call. When I think of volunteering at NAMI, you can do in our own voice, where we go out into the community, us folks with a diagnosed illness, and we talk about what it's like to live with our illnesses. Ending the Silence, where we show a film to middle schoolers, high schoolers, parents, religious leaders, all about suicide and saying the S word. Golly sheesh, what else? One of our most popular volunteer projects is peer-to-peer training, where people in recovery learn from each other how to be better recovered persons, if you will. So when we're talking about, do we need help on the daily bread? Yeah. Heck yeah. Call Christabel and ask if you can do something on the daily bread. But if you're looking for something with a little adventure, which is what I've turned into, you know, things like Family to Family, being at that seminar and maybe teaching it one day, being in things like In Our Own Voice and participating in it, not just watching it. You know, those small but major things change the way a person lives. And of course, with NamiWalk coming up a week from Saturday, please call us. We have plenty of volunteer opportunities for you. And I think I used to be a volunteer manager for the AmeriCorps Vista, which is like the Peace Corps in the Americas. And what I love to watch about volunteers is I would get these people that were so quiet and they were just kind of passive. Oh, that sounds fine. And then by the time, like 6 months had elapsed, by the time my contract had ended, they weren't these soft-spoken little people anymore. They had made friends. They had experienced things. They had found in themselves a talent they didn't know they had.
Yeah. Did they stop apologizing for everything they do, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, because that's the thing that happens, like people that they just keep apologizing.
I'm one of them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You don't have anything to apologize for. So obviously these programs that you're talking about, they must cost thousands of dollars, right? That's what it is? $1,000?
Complimentary and confidential.
Absolutely free. Unbelievable. My goodness. Can I ask you a question?
What's up?
May I high five you? Are we down for that? Right on air. You crushed this conversation. Let me just say, I've been on the edge of my seat this whole time. I hope everyone else was. What a great achievement in your life and for the lives of everyone that you are affecting, that are hearing your voice. And I really appreciate the hard work that you've done to become the person that you are today, who is so outgoing, able to talk in groups and console these folks, but then guide them and encourage them. It is a great feat. And to do it from where you were to what you're doing now, like, way to go. All right.
Thank you.
Easy to say, because today we made friends with Sarah Smolowitz, volunteer extraordinaire, obviously, at the National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, who provides advocacy, education, support, and public awareness so that all individuals and families affected by mental illness can build better lives. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
This was Lifestyle Tucson. Bing bong bing, time for a recap. I really enjoyed that conversation with Sarah. I come out swinging with positivity and always trying to relate on the show a lot. Sometimes I feel, obviously, I relate and try to relate too much. That's a little how that one started. I'm not trying to downplay anybody's problems, obviously. And some people are really dealing with bigger issues. That's what the point I ended up making was, boy, we really do have different things and different experiences. But when you feel like you're lost in the woods, or you feel like that the house is burning down, you don't know how to get out, no matter what your situation is, that's a terrible way to feel. You don't want to feel helpless. So I'm really glad that we then spoke about how hard it can be to overcome real trauma. Again, some people really go through trauma. I've been fortunate enough to not experience tons of that in my life. So letting these people talk and laying out, obviously, which is what I was happy to do for Sarah, and just really let her talk about her experiences, what she's gone through, and how she's built herself back up to the level of success she's at today. That's why it ended with a high five, because way to go. Because again, talking on the radio freaks people out a lot, let alone public speaking, talking to strangers, challenging them right there on the spot. So I really did appreciate what we talked about. And it's so nice to meet people in the community that are like being the shining example and being the, hey, I was where you were. So overcoming these things in childhood and growing up to be the person that you want to be, and or overcoming any trauma you have at any point, it could be in adulthood, to still become the person you want to be, is what's important about mental health. And isn't that what it is about? Becoming the person who you want to be, feeling the way you want to feel. So if that is something that you need, well, then maybe you need to go check out NAMI at NAMI.org, or you can check out our local chapter here at NAMISA.org. Get involved over at NAMIWalks.org as well to know what's going on next weekend, April 5th, for their big walk. It's going to be a good time right out there outside the Performance Center at 800 South Concert Place here in Tucson. 1 mile, 3K, 5K, and remember, you don't got to be some athlete, it's a walk. So enjoy a nice morning out at 9 a.m. and raise some money at their biggest charity event. Follow them on Instagram, over on Instagram.com/NAMI_Southern_Arizona. And remember, if you're having a problem, the crisis hotline's there. It's 520-622-6000. We've also got the suicide hotline, 988. They made it simple. You're not alone. No one wants you to harm yourself, ever. NAMI of Southern Arizona is serving Tucson since 1983 and improving the quality of life for all those affected by mental illness. So again, reach out to them at 622-5582. They are located at 6122 East 22nd Street here in Tucson. And I want to thank our new friends at NAMI for joining me today. You've been listening to Lifestyle Tucson. If you're a nonprofit that would like to be on the show, email lifestyletucson@gmail.com. For more information about this program or to listen to something you may have missed, go to the Sunday Mornings page on klpx.com, kfma.com, mixfm.com, or espntucson.com. You can also subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, and Audible, or wherever fine podcasts are. Volunteer extraordinaires. Follow on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Lifestyle Tucson, because I'm your BFF, your best Frank forever, Frank Powers. And toot toot Tucson, I love you the most.